Hello, everyone. Just want to welcome everyone to Dharma Drum Retreat Center. And we'll be getting underway in a few minutes. We'll just allow more people to come in. Nice to see all of you. See some old friends. So tonight, it is my great pleasure to introduce David Lisson, who will be giving us the Dharma talk tonight. David has been sharing Chan and Zen meditation teachings for over 15 years. He's led intensive meditation retreats, and I have been on some of them. And he's taught classes and activities, all meditation related, at various monasteries, college campuses, and private institutions throughout North America, Europe, and East Asia. He was previously known as Venerable Chang Wen, and he was one of the few Western monastic disciples of Chan Master Shang Yen. He has been a monk for over a decade. He had been a monk for over a decade and has since returned to lay life to share the insights of the Buddha in his own creative way. David is fluent in Mandarin Chinese and has done extensive work translating the teachings of Chinese Buddhism into English, both on retreat and in published works. He holds a bachelor's in environmental studies, a master's degree in mental health counseling, and is currently a counselor at a clinic for people suffering from severe mental illness. He also has his own life mentoring coaching practice, guiding people in their cultivation of wisdom and compassion on an individual basis. And I've known David for many years and have marveled at his teaching abilities and his ability to make the Dharma accessible for everyone. So this is really a treat, and I'm so happy to introduce him. So, David?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here to the last moment. Thank you, Harry.
Sure.
Thanks, Harry, for the very kind introduction. It's great to see everybody. I can only actually see a few of you, but quite a few familiar faces. It's very nice. I'm just taking some time to look through the pages here to see who's here. Okay, so this is great. Just a double check. Can everyone hear my voice clearly? If you can, thumbs up. Okay. And if you can't, because sometimes depending on your setup there, if you can't hear, I'll just give you a couple seconds to adjust your volume there so you don't miss anything. Have your tea or water or whatever you're drinking ready. It's kind of the advantage of listening to a talk from home, huh? You can make yourself comfortable. Me too. Okay, I got some young folks here today too. Awesome. Okay. So again, welcome everyone to tonight's talk. This, I think, is the first public talk I'm giving for DDRC online. I've been leading some retreats recently, mostly the one-day retreats, and this is just the first talk. So, as you may know, the topic of tonight's talk is emphasize the process. Emphasize the process. And to talk about this, I plan to use a teaching from a Chan master from a few centuries ago. So there's a Chan master, a teacher from the Chinese Buddhist tradition named Hanshan, Hanshan De. So this is the Hanshan of the late Ming Dynasty. This is the scholar monk. This is not the poet who used to live in the forest and write on stones. That's a different Hanshan for those of you who don't speak Chinese. So this is Hanshan De. He lived from it says here 1546 to 1623. So it's the 17th century, late Ming Dynasty, China. He was uh, he was also a poet. He wrote a lot about the practice. He wrote poetry. He wrote prose, or just very clear instructions, actually, on the practice itself and on the principles of Buddhism, of Buddhist understanding. He was also a practitioner, so he wrote about his experiences with meditation, with practice in daily life. And I don't know if any of you have read his works. Some of his works have been translated into English, possibly other languages. And if you've read any books by Chan Master Sheng Yen, particularly, I think it's Getting the Buddha Mind, there's a poem called Contemplating Mind, Guan Xin, which was attributed to Master Hanshan. He also wrote something called The Essentials of Practice, regarding the essentials of practice and enlightenment for beginners. And that text is included in another book by Master Sheng Yen called Shattering the Great Doubt. And Shattering the Great Doubt is the name of the book. And in Master Hanshan's teachings, he often wrote um, about a method called Huatou, which I think many of you have heard before. Huatou practice in Japanese Zen, it has some similarity to the Gong'an practice. However, in the Chinese Chan tradition, the application is a bit different. So Master Hanshan wrote something which is referred to now as the 6 principles of practice. And I'm going to use these principles as a basis for my talk tonight. It's called the 6 principles of practice. Um, I'm sorry, I actually don't have the original text, the location of that text in the Tripitaka for you. But if you look it up, the Chinese is, if you search for Hanshan 6个原则, 修悟6个原则, you should be able to find it. For those who speak English, I think you should be able to find it as well, just by doing a brief search on the 6 principles. Okay? So, although these 6 principles often are used to talk about the practice, Buddhist practice, in the context of the Huatou method, because that's what Master Hanshan often advocated. The Huatou method, as well as Pure Land practices, such as reciting the Buddha's name. However, these 6 principles apply to any method. It doesn't matter which method of practice you use. These are just basic principles for how to approach the whole path. So this applies to everyone, to all of us who are on this path. So let me first just recite what these 6 principles are, and then I'll go through them one by one, kind of explore them together. So the first principle is, don't crave for the mysterious or the miraculous. Don't crave for the mysterious or the miraculous. The second, don't wait for enlightenment. Don't wait for enlightenment. The third, excuse me, don't seek sainthood. Literally, it was don't seek the wondrous fruit, but that just refers to sainthood in Buddhist um, terminology. The next, the fourth, is don't be afraid. Literally, don't create fear within yourself. The fifth is don't generate suspicion. Don't be suspicious or don't generate suspicion. And the sixth is be confident. Cultivate a determined kind of confidence. Okay, so those are the six. If you don't have much time, you could just hang up now and go about your business. Those are the six principles. You learned it right here. If you have time, then you could stick around and I'll go through them one by one and try to be as practical as possible. Because when I was preparing for this, I found that these principles are so simple, but they actually they could point out so many of our flaws or blind spots that we may have as we um, progress along this path of practice. So they're wonderfully simple, but wonderfully accurate. Okay. So the first one, don't crave for the mysterious or miraculous. What's that talking about? Well, the word mysterious, the Chinese, the original is xuan, xuan miao. Mysterious can refer to, in one context, theory. Many of you know that Buddhist theory, Buddhist philosophy can be very complicated and can be very intricate, very detailed. And if you look at especially the teachings of the Abhidharma, which are the explanation of the Buddha's core teachings, we have the Abhidharma, it's kind of the most basic Buddhist psychology texts that were written by great teachers within the Buddhist tradition who came after the Buddha. And then we also have teachings, for example, in Mahayana Buddhism of what's called consciousness only. Have you encountered that? Mind only or consciousness only. Sometimes it's referred to as manifestation only teachings. These are very detailed explanations about how the mind works and how consciousness, this one general term, can be looked at in its many functions and is divided often into 8 functions of consciousness, right? This teaching can be quite difficult to fathom, and especially if you're reading the original Chinese, some of it can be very difficult to even approach. And there are other traditions, the Tiantai tradition within Chinese Buddhism, which both the Tiantai and Huayan categorize all of the Buddha's teachings into very detailed, structured systems of thought. Um, for some people, this is like lovely. For people who enjoy philosophy and who have a keen interest in thinking and have a strong capacity to reason, um, people love this kind of thing. They eat it up. The more theory, the better. But there's a danger in that. uh, while there's no problem with theory in itself, And the reason theory is detailed is so that it gives us a clear map of how to practice. These teachings are not for us to just absorb and like accumulate knowledge. Unless you're an academic where you do want to accumulate knowledge, write papers, and be well known for academics, that's not our purpose as practitioners. So um, although it's not the purpose just to acquire knowledge and even be able to speak very fluently these Buddhist teachings and impress people, it's possible that we may become overly attached to theory and actually think about it way too much. Um, Maybe without noticing it, we want to feel good that we know a lot about Buddhism. It makes us feel good to know things. So if we know a lot about Buddhism, maybe we feel good when we talk to our friends, we talk to people, and we explain to them how much we know. It may feel good and they're impressed, but does that really help our practice at all? Actually seems to be feeding our ego more than anything, to just speak about the Buddha's teachings, and especially the mysterious or hard to understand ones, to impress people. That's just feeding our ego. So that's obviously not the purpose of theory, but that can happen. Another thing that can happen when we study theory is we actually just get caught in the words. We get trapped in the words and concepts and we try to figure them out. If we don't understand, we may spend a lot of time thinking through it, imagining through the theory, trying to figure it out. And on the one hand, it is important to have a basic understanding because that gives us direction. But if we find ourselves overthinking about the Dharma, giving ourselves a headache trying to figure out theory, or in the midst of daily life when we should be doing one thing, we're still trying to figure out what that particular Dharma teaching was. That's a problem, no? That's when the Dharma starts to interfere with our life. Or if we're meditating and we can't stop thinking about these theories, we're thinking about, well, what does no self mean? Or what is the eighth consciousness? What is the seventh consciousness? I don't even know what the sixth consciousness is, let alone seventh and eighth. If we're trying to figure things out in the midst of our meditation, then we've been caught in words, trapped in concepts. And the Buddha actually warned us against this in a sutra called The Better Way to Handle a Snake. Have you heard of that one? The better way to handle a snake. Well, if you could think, what's the poor way to handle a snake? It's just to grab it by its tail. And why? Because if we grab the snake by its tail, what can it do? It can rear around and bite us, right? That's like getting lost in theory, overthinking, and having it interfere with our life. The proper way to handle a snake is to actually grab it by the neck and to use a tool. Use a long stick, put it behind the neck of the snake. Then you can grab it and handle it properly. So it won't bite you, it won't bite anybody else. You can put it in a bag and remove it, or you could set it free somewhere else. Everybody's safe, everybody's fine. This is like skillfully studying the theory of Buddhism. We have to be really careful that when we study, we know that this is time to study and think about the Dharma. We have time to do that. But then we also need time to not think about the Buddha's teachings. to put it down and to let the teachings resonate within our mind, and to use a teaching of consciousness only, to let this understanding, what we've heard, what we've thought about, to let it um, grow and mature within our eighth consciousness, so to speak. One analogy that Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh uses is that when we study the Dharma, this is like a gardener planting seeds. We hear it, we think about it, and then when the gardener is finished planting seeds uh, and finished watering the seeds, the gardener has to leave the rest up to the earth. The gardener has to rest. It can't be working all day and all night. The farmer needs to rest. And the rest of the work, a lot of work, is done by the earth, done by the rain, done by the sun. The seeds mature and grow over time because of these different elements. So when we study Dharma, it's the same. We read, we think about it, and then we put it down. And these concepts are they're still being digested, even when we're not actively trying to figure something out. We're understanding them, we're processing them, even without trying. And as we live our life, as we use the method, we may start to have different insights into the meaning of the theory. That's like the nourishment from the sun and the rain. Living our life, using our method, living mindfully. This is the nourishment which is feeding our understanding of the Buddha's teachings. And over time, we understand. And of course, there are times where we still need to plant more seeds, need to actively work like a farmer on our study. But it's important to be skillful. This is the skillful way. And Master Hanshan is pointing that out. However mysterious or hard to understand the teachings may be, we want to approach them skillfully. And we shouldn't crave for it and try to just acquire knowledge, impress people, or get lost in theory. We have to be very careful about that. So this is what don't crave for the mysterious refers to. But there's also another word, mysterious and miraculous. Don't crave for miraculous occurrences. What does that refer to? This refers to more of the realm of experience. So we could call it mystical experience. We can call it not ordinary experience, referring to the kinds of feelings and phenomenon we can experience in the context of meditation or intensive practice. So, like some of you may know, and some of you may have had experiences that in meditation, in meditation, we may have feelings um, or experience our thoughts and even sensory phenomenon, hearing things, seeing things. We may experience things which never happened in daily life in a more dispersed state of mind. A simple example is that in meditation, you may feel that all of a sudden your body feels very light, or the sensations in different parts of your body may vanish. You may not be able to feel your hands anymore. Or maybe you feel a very warm and comfortable and even hard to describe kind of even thickness or texture of your own body. Just sitting completely still, you may experience your body having a different kind of texture. just because of the state of your body and mind being calmer and more concentrated due to using a method of meditation. And this is a more, kind of coarse elementary experience. There may be other experiences where people see amazing, beautiful colors, or even, for people who have a strong faith in Buddhism, they may see the Buddha, see bodhisattvas, these saints of Buddhism within their mind, or maybe they even see them. It feels as if they see them with their eyes. This can be very exciting and very pleasant, um, and very fascinating, very um, tempting. Master Hanshan is warning us not to crave these things. Why? Well, because they're just experiences and they pass. No matter how pleasant the feeling, no matter how miraculous the vision, it's just an experience and it will pass. And most likely, it's actually not going to make a big change in your character. It's just a phenomenon that happens along the way. So, no big deal. We don't need to make a thing out of it. But if we do make a thing out of it, if we do seek these kind of miraculous experiences, that can become a problem. That can become an obstruction where a person's constantly waiting to feel something, constantly waiting to see something. Which, if we're constantly waiting to feel or see something, then how can we actually concentrate our mind? Our mind would be full of these distracting thoughts, these images, and ideas about the future or the past if we've experienced something before. So any kind of craving is a problem, but even craving for theory or craving for miraculous experience is a problem and can actually drive some people to have to become mentally unstable because of their craving. Master Hanshan is warning us to be careful. So this first principle actually connects then to the next one. Don't wait for enlightenment. Don't wait for enlightenment. 不期待开悟. And maybe you've heard this before. Um, but this whole idea of enlightenment, it's very enticing, isn't it? Especially within the Chan and Zen traditions or the sudden teachings of the Buddha, where he talks about this instantaneous moment of insight, where a person who has that insight is freed from suffering, freed from anxiety. Mind is freed from the poisons, so to speak, of anger and craving and confusion. This whole idea of enlightenment that Buddhism talks about is very enticing. And when we hear the word sudden, we're even more likely to become trapped in the idea that it's somehow a shortcut or somehow easy. Um, uh, Master Shengyan used to joke sometimes how people would come to him and they'd say, "So this sudden method, can you just give it to me? Like, how do I get it? How do I get this enlightenment thing? Just show me the sudden way." People actually had this idea that it doesn't require much work. You just need to know the shortcut. And some teachers even use that term, shortcut, as if there's a way to kind of skip over practice and skip over the pain of everything and just get it, just get uh, just get enlightened. But that's not the case. That's not the right understanding. Although the moment of insight, it's always sudden. The moment before insight, we're confused. Our mind is filled with attachment. Our mind is filled with constant thinking. The moment of insight is suddenly happens. It's, it's true. But it doesn't mean it's an easy path to it, or it doesn't mean it doesn't require any practice or effort or training. So the problem is if a person is always waiting for it to happen, waiting for this enlightenment to happen, expecting it to happen, they're pretty much in the same position as the people waiting for some miraculous experience. Their mind is full of thoughts, thinking about what it's going to be like, wanting it to happen. That's a distracted and scattered mind. That's a very burdened mind. And that is actually a dull mind, a mind that's dwelling in ideas of enlightenment. It's dulled by those ideas, by attachment to those ideas. There's one example of a person who was on retreat. I happened to be the timekeeper. So I was sitting in the back of the meditation hall. And this person was practicing very diligently, a very respectful person, very genuine, very dedicated. They were practicing for years, um, and they were working very hard. Um, during the retreat, there was I think it was the teacher was walking around the meditation hall, just like we do in our tradition. We walk up and down the aisle to see if someone may be either falling asleep, they may need help with something, they look like they're struggling. The teacher or the teacher or the timekeeper would walk around to help them out, sometimes even talk to them. Well, this teacher was just walking around and looking at people, just kind of observing them more closely. And it was from behind, so nobody could see the teacher, but you could hear someone was walking behind you. So this one gentleman who was sitting and working hard on his practice, he started to shake, and the floor started to shake. And then I opened my eyes and I watched. That's the timekeeper's role, to kind of watch and see what's happening. So I heard the floor shaking, and that was not usual. Opened my eyes to look at him. His whole body was shaking and vibrating, and his head was turning red. It looked like he was like a bomb about to explode, and he was breathing very heavy. Um, some of you may think, "Whoa, was he like almost there? Was this a miraculous experience?" Um, Actually, no. He eventually stopped shaking because the teacher just walked away. Later on, he told us that what was happening was that as the teacher was walking by, he had such a powerful expectation that the teacher would strike him on the shoulder, as it's done in meditation halls. Uh, Strike him on the shoulder, and then he could experience enlightenment. He had that expectation, and he was completely distracted and bothered by that expectation. It drove his whole body to shake and his breathing to become heavy. That's the kind of one example, an exaggerated example of what can happen if a person's expecting this enlightenment, waiting for it. It causes all kinds of problems. That's a more exaggerated situation, but that can happen. Less exaggerated one is that the person just ends up thinking about enlightenment and is not actually working on themselves. We're just dreaming about being happy, being free, dreaming about being in some other state. Okay. So Master Hanshan here is saying, don't do that. The number 2, don't do that of the list of 6. Okay. Don't wait for enlightenment. It's just creating obstructions. Okay, and just a request that during the talk, if you can refrain from texting, we'll have time at the end to have some interaction, so you could save your questions and your thoughts until then. I appreciate that. The third principle that Master Hanshan talks about is to not seek sainthood. Don't seek sainthood. And what does that refer to? Well, for those of you who have basic understanding of Buddhist teaching, the idea of sainthood is that, from one perspective, a person is completely free from anger, craving, and confusion. Their mind is so called unshakable. In the face of any situation, even in the face of harm to themselves or in the face of death, they're unafraid, unshaken, freed from the problems, psychological problems of any kind. Depending on the perspective within Buddhism, sainthood has different stages, you can call it, or different degrees of being free from that suffering. From another perspective, although a person may be freed from the poisons of the mind, they may not be so skillful at helping others, and they may still have some habitual tendencies. But we won't get into that. Just in general, sainthood is a person who's liberated from suffering, liberated from confusion. Master Hanshan is reminding us to not seek that either. Now, why would a person seek that? And what's the difference between seeking sainthood and seeking enlightenment? Well, we could make a distinction that enlightenment, or this idea of insight, um, it can be just a moment, a brief moment where our mind has dropped this burden of self-centeredness, craving and anger and everything else. A moment of dropping all of that and having clarity. In the Chan tradition, that's called to see one's self-nature, to illuminate the mind and see the nature of things, nature of oneself. 见性 is referred to in Chinese. It could be just a moment, could be a brief period of time, could be an extended period of time, but it doesn't equal liberation, sainthood, so to speak. So sainthood, for people who are dedicated to Buddhist practice, sainthood can be a kind of status, where a person craves status. They crave some sort of credential. And they may crave recognition from other people. They want to be seen as holy, as having not only a brief insight, but they want to be seen as someone who is liberated. Or they may assume that they are completely liberated and free from any kind of problem or attachment. Especially when we look at the earlier or um, the discourses of the Buddha during the Buddha's time, and if you see this in the Nikayas or the Agamas, you have many occasions where the story goes that so and so will meet the Buddha, practice for a little while, and all of a sudden you hear the next thing they're liberated, they're saints, they've achieved the noble sainthood, freedom from the fetters of the mind. And it may seem like, geez, well, it's like they were just with the Buddha for a few weeks and now they're a saint, or even a couple years. It's like, wow, that's a good deal. I can do that. I think I could do that. When we hear of these things, we may think again that we just work hard and we can do it. And we may crave it. What's interesting, though, if we look at the records of what we consider now to be great masters, great teachers who have passed on the tradition of Buddhism, For example, within the masters of the Chinese lineage, none of them claimed that they were liberated saints. None of them said, come to my monastery here. I'm a saint. This is the place to study. Maybe other people would claim that they're saints. Their disciples would claim that they're saints. Just like nowadays, if you have a teacher, you really love your teacher just seems so compassionate and so wise. It's easy to wonder, are they a saint? Are they free from the problem of human suffering? Most great masters, people who are recognized for their compassion, didn't claim to be saints. However, we do have people now in modern times claiming to be saints and in a way advertising for themselves. First claiming to be saints and then saying, well, you got to understand, it's not as difficult as you think it is. So I did it, you can do it. And then they'll put on their book that here's their name, and then they'll put their credentials. They have this PhD, they studied whatever for so many years, and they've achieved liberation, sainthood. It's a credential. Some people may be deluded by their idea of themselves. Some people may just be tricky. They're trying to gain customers, so to speak, or disciples. Other people may actually just be deluded. And because they may have had a powerful experience, they may think that, well, this is it, I guess. I don't feel any anger. I don't feel afraid. Nothing bothers me, they may think. And so this must be liberation. And they claim that. This becomes their credential. This becomes their label. This is a problem. If you were to say they're not a saint, give that a try. Criticize them. See what happens. See if they can take it. Maybe they can. Maybe they get really upset. If they get really upset, would that be the response of a saint? If they got very angry that you criticized them or said their teachings were incorrect. Regardless, this is for us. We don't want to be caught like that. We don't want to be caught in the idea that we've attained some state or some status, no matter what our experiences, even if we've had recognized experiences of seeing the nature from our own teacher or from some other teacher. We have to be very careful not to be caught in having a status. I'm now at such and such a stage. I'm now such and such level of sainthood. That is a big problem. That's what's often referred to as this greater, or not greater, but almost super arrogance. The super arrogance or incredible degree of arrogance that practitioners may experience more than someone who hasn't practiced. And why? That may seem strange. Why would a practitioner become super arrogant when the Buddha's teaching is based on selflessness? Well, it's because along the way, when a person's mind, when our minds become more calm, more stable, when our knowledge accumulates, our understanding of the teaching, in combination with a stable, clear mind that's very much free from the fears that we had before, we can accidentally or unknowingly become very arrogant. And arrogance is one of these poisons that can be very difficult to uproot because we may feel so confident. It's this super confidence which prevents us from actually being humble and prevents us from being more introspective about our flaws, about our attachments. So Master Hanshan clearly points out the dangers of seeking sainthood and then trying to, or mistakenly clinging to the idea that we've got it, we've gotten sainthood. And this reminds me of a teaching from the Diamond Sutra. Have you folks read the Diamond Sutra? No, some have, some haven't. There's a section in the Diamond Sutra which is very simple but quite powerful, where the Buddha asks the disciple, Subhuti, what do you think? Are you the if a person thinks that they've attained arhatship, if a person thinks they've attained sainthood, you think they've attained sainthood? And the student says, no. Someone who attains sainthood wouldn't be trapped in the idea that I've attained sainthood. I'm a saint. If they're caught up in that idea, that's a clear sign of big self, a big ego, a big attachment to their idea of themselves. The next principle that Master Hanshan points out, the fourth, is don't be afraid. The previous principles, were definitely for people who were more gung-ho about the practice, very diligent, very intent on attaining something. The next couple of principles are for people who may be lacking in some confidence and who are afraid of what's going to happen along the way. For example, some people are afraid to approach practice. Again, I use the word practice a lot. In our lineage, we use this word practice to refer to the Chinese 修行, which means cultivate or to develop oneself. And this doesn't only refer to sitting meditation. This word practice just means to developing, training the mind, developing insights through various methods. So some people are afraid to approach the practice, and they may think, well, I probably am not cut out for it. Whenever I sit down to meditate, I have too many thoughts. I'm easily distracted, so I guess I'm not good at meditation. There are quite a few meditation teachers here I see. How many have you heard many people say that in some like beginner's meditation class? They say, you ask them, how was the first 5 minutes? And they say, oh, this is too hard. I have too many distracting thoughts. I guess I just can't do this. That comes from just a fear of failure. As if, they should be able to have completely peaceful and clear, undistracted minds just upon starting meditation. That may be their assumption, just like you do it and it works. So some people may be afraid of failure. Other people may be afraid of what I talked about before, some of these so-called miraculous experiences, especially if they read a lot. Read a lot about these descriptions of mystical experiences. Maybe some people are afraid of that. They don't want to get stuck in some state or have to encounter these bizarre experiences. They may be afraid of that. They may also be afraid because they were given incorrect instruction. For example, the method of Huatou that Master Hanshan often advocated. Some people hear that word, the Huatou method, and they become afraid because people have told them it's all about shouting and screaming and hitting with the stick and having these kind of drastic reactions. And they're afraid. They're like, whoa, if that's a Huatou retreat, I don't want to go to that. I just want to relax. They were given not so accurate information. They may be afraid of that. They were given the wrong information about what the process of practice is like. Other people, maybe some of us, are afraid of actually facing our pain, facing our deep psychological pain. Um, and this kind of person may approach Buddhism and grasp very tightly to theory, grasp onto their meditative experience, and and just think that's the result of it. They may be quite afraid of touching their pain, of coming more deeply in contact with the very powerful experiences of craving, of anger, traumatic experiences that may still leave this kind of deep impression in their mind and lead to a lot of fear, possibly lead to conditions which really interfere with their life. People, for example, who have been through war or have been through very violent, traumatic experiences, um, these experiences may haunt them in a way. They may appear in their mind when they don't want these feelings and thoughts to appear, and a person can be overcome by this pain. With practice, we need to actually face these deep pains. We can't expect to escape from them and just use some method to avoid them, or just expect that with the Chan or Zen approach we just get sudden enlightenment. We don't have to touch pain. um, is that the case with us? Could we possibly be avoiding our suffering, avoiding our anxieties and our psychological pain? And as it's called now, it's called spiritual bypassing, using theory, using the theory of Buddhism or whatever spiritual practice to somehow avoid pain, somehow avoid our humanness, and just look for the good stuff, just look for the miraculous, just looking for enlightenment. Um, could that be the case? Practice, cultivation is about facing it. And if we use methods, no matter what the method is, to stabilize our mind, to help us to gradually let go of the more coarse attachments, the more coarse cravings for just maybe sensual pleasures or fame or wealth. We can consider these kinds of coarse cravings. And if we could even calm our minds so that we can let go of the cravings for meditative experience, very naturally, some of these more deeply embedded pains will surface on their own. Surface in the form of thoughts, images, and feelings. Not only thoughts, but our whole body is involved whenever thoughts arise. Emotions arise. Maybe even physical movements. I know a person who's working through their pain. They have traumatic experience when they were younger. And sometimes when this arises, their whole body may shake uncontrollably. Just happens. But they know what it is. They're not afraid of it. They know what's happening. They continue to relax. They continue to face it. And it passes. The physical phenomenon of shaking passes. The unpleasant feelings connected to emotion, connected to certain areas of their body, these unpleasant feelings change and pass. And the disturbing memories also subside. And it's not that they forget about it, their memory doesn't disappear. Their memory actually becomes even clearer about what had happened to them. They're not suppressing it anymore, and they're not overcome with emotion and fear anymore. So, actually, the memory of their previous experience is even clearer. So, they don't lose the memory, they just, they're able to be unaffected by when the memory arises, because we can't control that. We can't control when a thought pops into our mind. Memory just arises. We see something and it connects with the seeds, so to speak, within our mind, and the memory comes up. Through their practice of facing pain, they're able to be unaffected and much less disturbed. For some people, completely undisturbed by their memories. It's no longer painful memories, it's just memories. And their life is no longer bothered or disturbed by their previous traumatic experience. So by through facing it, they transform. They transform their whole way of um, experience. What was pain just becomes simply an experience. So through this process of facing all of our pains, being able to gradually let go of our resistance to them or the seeking for pleasant things, we can let go more and more of these burdens, psychological burdens that keep us trapped. But what's interesting is that we may also become afraid of letting go. I don't know if you've experienced that yourself. A person may experience fear of letting go of their clinging to all these thoughts, which, you know, before was a constant companion. And you may have experienced this yourself. At the beginning of your practice, your thoughts maybe were your companions, even though you didn't like some of them. Some of the thoughts were unpleasant, kind of like the friend you sort of like, but you really don't like, or the friends that you really don't like, but they still show up knocking at your door or texting you. The friends you sort of like, and then the friends you really like. Our thoughts were our companions for many years, as well as the emotions that go along with it. After some time, we find that our mind becomes quieter and less filled with the noise of these self attachments, these obsessive thoughts. The more quiet the mind becomes, initially it may be not quite familiar. It can be quite odd to suddenly find that the mind is quiet. Not dead, not a dead quiet of being asleep, but a silence and a clarity. It can be odd. And for some people, at some point in time, they may fear that if they continue to let go, they may let go of themselves altogether, forget themselves, or even not care about themselves or the people they love. And I always remember the story that Master Shengyan told about one student who thought if he kept letting go, maybe he wouldn't love his girlfriend anymore. I know so many of you have heard that many times, but it's so concrete. If I keep letting go, maybe I won't love my girlfriend. Maybe I won't recognize the people I love. For other people, they may find that sitting in meditation, it may be quiet outside, very quiet inside, within themselves. And suddenly fear may overtake them. Because who knows what happens if we completely let go? It can be a scary kind of thing because we're so used to the company of our attachments. We're so used to the company of our obsessive thinking and self-centered thinking, self-creating thinking, that to let it go can be unsettling. Master Hanshan is reminding us, don't be afraid of that. Because the more we let go, the more free we will be. Just like we know now that what we've let go of before, this has allowed us to be this much more free, this much more at ease. And actually, we become more loving of people when we're not obsessed with ourselves. Isn't that correct? If we're not caught up with ourselves, we recognize, gee, there's a lot of people around me who need love, who need attention, who need our attention. So with letting go, we become more compassionate. There's no need to fear. Then we have the fifth principle, which is don't generate suspicion or doubt. This isn't the doubt of the method of Huatou, the kind of questioning. It's not the deep questioning of your existence. It's not the deep questioning of the not knowing, the wanting to know that's utilized with the method of Huatou. It's not that kind of doubt. It's the ordinary doubt and suspicion. The doubt that says, well, does this stuff really work? Is this whole enlightenment thing like a joke? Or is it just like one of these other just sort of religious ideals that everybody believes in, but it's like not really true? Is there such a thing as enlightenment? Is there even such a thing as the Buddha? Maybe a person doubts everything. We have fake news now. Maybe all the sutras were fake. Maybe somebody had all just made it up because they were making money or because they were gaining disciples. Even for a person who has a strong confidence in the tradition of Buddhism, or for a person who has a strong religious faith in these saints and powerful figures of Buddhism, anyone can encounter doubt to a greater or lesser extent. Right? This doubt could be doubting ourselves. The person who may think, maybe I'm just not cut out for this. Maybe you're cut out for it, but not me. So I'll practice like when I'm older, or let me retire first, then I'll practice. I just need some more time, so let me retire. Or again, a person may feel lacking in confidence and doubting because they don't get results quickly enough. Okay. Maybe some people just doubt the method because there are so many methods within Buddhism, right? There's so many traditions to begin with. There's so many methods within these different traditions. Maybe we're doubting which method is the best one. Which one's the best one? There's got to be a best one, maybe we think. Or maybe we just don't know which one is for us. So we so we doubt. Maybe this isn't the right one. Let me try that Huatou method. I was using that for a week and that really I didn't feel anything. Let me try sound illumination. Well, actually, I tried that last year on retreat. That really didn't work well. Let me try something else. By doubting the method, changing methods all the time, how can we actually get accustomed to it, let alone deepen our experience with it and our ability to apply it? But we may do that. Or maybe we may doubt the teacher. Maybe we wonder, is this person genuine? Is this person truthful? Um, there's so many stories nowadays, especially of great gurus who end up having all these scandals and just being like millionaires, and you end up finding out that your guru, who seemed to be austere and have all these wonderful qualities, they just had like a bunch of Rolls Royces and lots of material possessions, which maybe then doubt, well, why does this teacher need so many cars? Or why does the teacher do this? Why does the teacher do that? Even if the teacher seems to be living a wholesome and respectful life, maybe we doubt, well, is this teacher enlightened? And then we look at the credentials and we say, well, this teacher was confirmed or is affirmed in some way and they have a credential. Maybe we feel a bit better about that, but then we may doubt, well, what's that all about? It's just a credential. So a lot of doubts can happen about ourselves, about the method, about the teacher, about the whole tradition. But what can help us is actually just to know that nobody's perfect. Although Buddha Dharma talks about Buddhahood as perfection, it also says that Buddhahood is not very easy and it's not common. So it's safer just to know that most everyone's not perfect. This way we won't be so critical, we won't be so expecting, and we'll be able to learn from them. We'll be able to learn from the imperfect teachers, and we can be imperfect students, and we can be forgiving and understanding of each other and support each other in that way. So nobody's perfect. There's no need to have so much doubt. However, it's important to observe them, to observe the teacher's behavior, to see if it's in accord with the teachings of Buddha Dharma, if they live a healthy, ethical lifestyle. It's important to observe and make some judgment, not to criticize, but a healthy kind of judgment to evaluate. Well, is this a good place to study? Is this a good situation? Is this community safe? Is this teacher trustworthy? It may take some time to observe, and that's healthy. And what's important is that we understand the teaching of the Buddha. Not that we just believe a teacher because they're charismatic, attractive, they seem calm, they seem wise. It's very important to understand the basic principles of the Buddha's teaching. If the teacher is teaching in accord with those basic principles, well, then we know, we can feel safe that it's the right direction. They're not perfect, but it can help us with our practice. As far as which method is the best one, is there really a best method? We may often need a teacher to help us choose a method that's appropriate for our condition. So yes, in a way, there's a method that's very suitable for us at this moment. We may need some guidance on how to choose the proper method, the most suitable one for us at this time. But it doesn't mean that the methods are bad or better or worse compared to each other. It's just what's suitable for us at this moment. We may need some help with that, and that can help resolve a lot of our doubts. So having guidance is really important. For the last principle that Master Han Shan presents to us, the last one is be confident. Be confident and determined. Not confident for a day or confident for a week, but we need to cultivate confidence, develop it. It's not going to fall on us. just like when we approach other endeavors in our life, for example, your profession or other skills that you've developed, right? We don't just like immediately have confidence and feel completely doubtless, right? Just think of the skill that you developed. Maybe it's a trade. Maybe in the beginning it seemed that it was very difficult and you doubted yourself. But in time, your confidence developed through making mistakes, um, through consulting your teacher or mentor of the trade. If you, I think of, for example, the trade or the art of carving Buddhist statues and even statues in general. Isn't that amazing? To take a block of wood and to make it into something so intricate, so ornate. Um, if we were to look at that and say, can I do that? We may think, no way, I could never do that. But if we have a guide, if we have a mentor, if we know the theory and we have the tools, we can make something. Maybe not everybody is cut out to be a uh, master carver or a master artist, but we can develop confidence, we can develop skill. So this final principle is really about developing confidence and being determined, not giving up when we experience setbacks and difficulties. And we can look at building confidence in 4 ways. There's one kind of confidence which actually does come fairly readily for some people. For example, if we have the opportunity to be in contact with a person who practices the Buddha's way, and if we find if we find them to be very compassionate, very skillful, very loving people, it may be a teacher, it may be a friend, just by contacting them, right? By seeing them, the way they move, and even the way they interact with people, that may be inspiring enough to develop confidence, or to hear their stories, to hear how before they were very much filled with fear and anxiety, but to see them now with such a, a demeanor of ease and confidence, that can give us a lot of confidence ourselves. But we can't rely on that. We also need to understand, as I mentioned before, understanding the basic theory, the basic roadmap of practice is important. That's the rational understanding. The previous one is more emotional. It's just like what we see and what we hear. We see the person, we hear the person, it inspires us. That's more emotional. We need the rational part of our mind to grasp and understand what is the goal of practice, what is the process of practice, what is the method. This is like the theory or the instructions on how to carve something, right? In addition to understanding, when we practice and we apply ourselves with the method, we gain experience. We experience firsthand that we can actually change. We can reduce our anxieties, reduce our self-centered attachments, and we can experience a greater deal of ease. The more we experience, the more confident we become. And this is different than, grasping and craving for experiences that I mentioned with the earlier principle. It's not about craving or holding on to experiences like trophies. But we know ourselves that practice gets results. We can know that we could know firsthand that a deeper awareness, greater awareness, yields insight and yields the greatest kind of confidence, which is the fourth, which is realization. Uh, the Buddhist idea of awakening or insight. The realization that everything about us is changing, from our body to our feelings to our thoughts. And if we don't cling to them, our mind can be put at ease. The burden that we usually experience of this self-centered, obsessive way of thinking and seeing, we can drop that. When we see clearly how our mind is working, how we're creating the suffering, we can drop it. That's one way to describe realization. The realization of selflessness, the realization of wisdom and compassion. So Master Hanshan is encouraging us. We need to develop confidence. It doesn't just happen. We need to develop it. And in time, the more we develop it, the more we'll be determined to face our pain and to transform our pain, transform ourselves, and by doing so, transforming others as well. So this is the sixth and final principle of Master Hanshan. Some of you may have joined us late, but I'm sure you'll be able to find this in a video. Hopefully we can post this soon. The six principles again, if you missed them. Don't crave for the mysterious or the miraculous. Don't wait for enlightenment. Don't seek sainthood. Don't be afraid. Don't generate suspicion. Be confident. Be determined. Okay. Now I'd like to give everyone an opportunity to ask some questions. If you have any questions, what we'll do is, because there's quite a few folks here, there's 70 or so, let's use chat. If you have a question, you'd like me to clarify something, or if you'd just like to share how you feel, share what you think, you can feel free to type it in the chat. And then for the questions that I think that may be helpful for everyone, I'll pick from those and try to address them. So I'm going to open up the chat here. Feel free to send me something. Okay, I see Jacob here. It's very active, very enthusiastic. Thank you for that. Okay. Someone is asking, what are the 6 principles in the Chinese? Well, I don't want to use time just to recite them, but if you just type 憨山大师6个原则, you'll be able to find them very quickly online. So if you could look that up. If anybody knows them, feel free to type them in the chat while we're discussing with each other here. Okay. Any others? Any other questions? Okay, Jane, that's the link to the 6th principles. Is that right? Okay, thank you for sharing that. It's great. So Agnes, if you look in the text in the chat box, you'll find the link there. Just to see a show of hands or a nod of heads, how many do you think tonight's talk was useful? Yeah? Okay, thank you. So I didn't waste our time then. That's good. I see thumbs up. Great. Okay. We have some questions coming in. Um, how to handle fear when letting go of addictive thoughts actually begins. So do you mean that when we start to actually let go of addictive thoughts, that how do we deal with fear? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question, because we get a sense of comfort from our addictions, right? It's not just addiction to like some sort of substance or food or media. In a sense, we're addicted to our thoughts and the impressions that a lot of these stimulus give us. So we get a lot of comfort from addictive thinking. It's not easy um, just to drop it and be unaffected by it. Um, but the fear, where does the fear come from? Fear actually comes from a kind of resistance. So in the process of letting go of our addictive thoughts, aren't we at the same time resisting and saying, I don't want this, or I don't want to let go, or I don't want something to happen after we let go? There's a kind of resistance there if there's fear. So I would say in order to deal with the fear, we have to notice the resistance. The thought patterns, they're going to happen, especially if they're addictive. They're going to happen. They're going to recycle because we've been so accustomed to it. But actually, we diffuse them by not resisting. It's the resistance or the craving that actually fuels them. So letting go just means we let them go. We let them go, or we let them burn out, so to speak. The thought patterns, the addictive thoughts, we don't resist them. And we don't resist what comes when we let go. So by relaxing ourselves, relaxation is the entryway to diffusing resistance, right? Try it. Try to have a resisting attitude and be very relaxed. When we fully relax ourselves physically, quite readily our attitude becomes relaxed. And we begin to let go of this kind of internal resistance. With that, fear should gradually subside as well. Um, but it may help to know that the emotional feeling or the feeling from fear may not just suddenly disappear, but the feelings that are generated from emotions, they may stick around. We may have all different kinds of feelings coursing through us. So even if we have these feelings, it doesn't mean we're doing something wrong. So, for example, I may have a thought pattern that's very addictive, and it drives this emotional feeling within my body. If I stop resisting the thought pattern, if I'm aware of it and stop resisting it, the thought pattern diffuses and subsides much more quickly than um, the feeling. Feeling may still be there for a while. It changes, it transforms, but we don't have to rush it, and we're not doing something wrong if the feeling is still there. Okay. So I think that was a great question. I don't know if it was a great answer. Maybe it's more something you have to work on, experiment with. Is there resistance when dealing with addictive thoughts? Okay. Just to let everybody know that we're aware, for those of you who don't want your picture shown or published, if the IT people can just, pay attention to that. We won't show you. Um, I think actually when we show the video, it's just going to be me and Harry. So don't worry about that. Yeah. There's a question. We still have time? Yeah, we still have a couple minutes. What does relaxation look like when resisting these thoughts? Is your question more just like, how do we relax when we notice we're resisting something? I don't know where this person is, but okay, yes, okay. Well, this is now technique. Um, how do we relax? There's different techniques. One technique we often use in the Dharma drum lineage is this step-by-step relaxation, starting with the eyes, the face, the head, going all through the body, part by part, step by step, just to first be fully aware of the body and its tension. We first have to be aware of it in order to be able to relax it. So that step-by-step relaxation is one approach. Another approach is just noticing that our body is tense and releasing it at once. You don't necessarily have to go step by step when you relax. Sometimes just noticing that we're tense, we can suddenly relax then. Um, so this requires method, this requires technique in order for us to develop awareness of tension as well as awareness of this more internal resistance. And for method, I think it's a good time to advertise that DDRC, Dharma Drum Retreat Center, we have retreats for you to learn the method. Tonight's talk was more focused on principles and basic theory. We really need to learn the technique in order to now apply the principle in practice. So I recommend you folks who have a question about that, you can join retreats. I think some of the retreats that are coming up, I forget who's leading it first, but I will be leading a retreat in June. So if you like the way I describe things, you find you can connect with it well, see you in June. If not, there's a whole list of other great teachers, and I recommend you give it a try. So I think now it's just about time. I'll let Harry finish up. Thank you again, everyone, for attending tonight. I appreciate your attendance, your attention. Hope to see you soon.
I want to thank you, David, so much for sharing your experience and knowledge and wisdom of the practice. It's very, very helpful, and it's something I think that will continue to resonate with us when you start to contemplate some of the things that David spoke about. It's something that we can do and help us assimilate to our practice. So on behalf of everyone here, I want to thank you so much.
Thanks, Harry. Thank you, everyone. So I guess we'll say good night, huh? Good night. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Feel free to text a little more. I'm going to take a look at these texts. Somebody left me some messages. Feel free to send something along.